Dynasty the King.
As a born and raised Dallas Cowboys fan, there were few things that robbed my joy more than watching the Eagles dominate in primetime. But the good news was the debut of the #1 production of NFL football. The Amazon crew was back. Amazon on Prime, Thursday Night Football. And it's a little bit special for this crew right here. Dylan, you're joining me. We're without the Value King tonight, but our show would not exist without Thursday Night Football on Prime. So there was an extra special level of love I had watching the game tonight, a nostalgic hit, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, seeing Mike on there, just literally pointing at the screen and being like, that's my guy. That is my guy. Yeah, no, I mean, you have a personal connection to the Amazon crew, so I'm sure that was even special for you to just maybe not be there, but to see them on the screen.
No, totally. Listen, there's plenty of fantasy storylines to unpack tonight, but we'd be remiss not to just bring it up. This was Prime's debut. NBC had the first Thursday night game. Last year, I was working with Thursday Night Football, doing some transportation. That's how I met Mike. That's the genesis of not just our show, but welcoming a wolf into the greatest league on earth, the Yacht Club. So it was cool to see because all the guys in the chat, this was the first time Mike was a member of our league and he was also on Thursday Night Football. Everyone in the chat was like, that's our dude. He's going to give so the best analysis.
And just like, when I saw Mike, it was a cool moment. It was pretty funny.
No, totally. So obviously we saw Mike, but we also saw a lot of things that you come to expect on primetime when you talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins statistically looked phenomenal. Kirk Cousins put up a great night, but of course the Vikings came up short, fell flat, and most of those stats I would say came in garbage time, Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, he looked not like primetime Kirk, which is good, right? He still lost the game, which is kind of the narrative as well. But I mean, he threw for, like you said, 360 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he did what he could, but I mean, they beat themselves with, talking actual football. They had 4 turnovers. Alexander Mattison looked awful. And there's plenty of takeaways on that side of the ball too.
Speaking of Alexander Mattison, everyone was super excited when Dalvin Cook left in the dynasty community. This is when Dalvin Cook leaves to go to the Jets, and he wasn't even going to the Jets. We didn't know where he was going, but the Vikings endorsing Alexander Mattison as a dynasty player. If you've had that guy on your roster or your taxi squad for years and years, waiting for him to get the opportunity, how disappointed are you when I think halfway through the game in some scoring formats, he had like negative and a half points. He had rushed for nothing. It wasn't until the garbage time passes from Kirk that he actually started scoring well for fantasy. Is Alexander Mattison not only a starter for the Vikings, is he someone you can trust in your lineup in any format the rest of the year, Dylan?
No, I mean, if you looked at the Vikings, they showed they want to throw the ball. Like they do not trust those backs. And even when they are getting the backs involved, it's a screen pass. That's kind of their run game. And so Alexander Mattison, I was screaming from the mountaintops initially, do not buy into Alexander Mattison. Nothing showed me that he was going to be successful other than, yes, he had some spot starts in fantasy where he kind of blew up, but it was a different offense. I never was really on that Alexander Mattison train. So to answer your question, at this point, I'm out on the Minnesota backfield. I think there's going to be some solution there. I don't know if they just abandon the run and only do pass. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I am out on that the Minnesota rushing game.
No, I agree. And I think part of it is because their offensive line, which had injuries coming into the game, sustained even more. And so it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to run the ball at all. But part of the reason Kirk had such a good game statistically was because when you can't run the ball and you're playing from behind, all you can do is throw to perhaps the best player in fantasy right now, Jay Jettas, Justin Jefferson, putting up another great night, couldn't find the end zone. In fact, frustratingly, I thought at halftime the Vikings were very much still in it. If you think about that play where Jettas catches the big pass and he's reaching for the goal line, but he fumbles out the back of the end zone, they were down 7-10 at the time. So they could have gone up 14-10 at halftime. But regardless of the swings of the game, Jettas was absolutely crucial and like necessary for the Vikings at every turn. It seemed like Kirk only had eyes for him.
Yeah, he did his thing. I mean, that's kind of what we expect from Justin Jefferson, right? And I mean, that's back-to-back weeks where I'm pretty sure he didn't even score a touchdown last week either, and yet he's still posting these wide receiver 1 weeks, and it's just what he does. He gets the volume and he gets the yak to kind of make that worth your while. But to me, what was interesting was I just didn't understand why they didn't get Jordan Addison more involved in the passing game.
I know.
It's got to be frustrating, right? I like Jordan Addison a lot. He had the touchdown, and that kind of buoyed his production. But it seemed like T.J. Hawkinson was a lot more involved with 2 touchdowns as well. How do you see that kind of playing out between
No,
those two?
I don't think TJ Hawkinson is the problem, to be honest with you. I think it's KJ Osborne, who had a number of drops.
Dropping
He
passes
was
left and right.
he was the opposite of clutch. So I don't know if it's Addison learning the playbook, if it's that old adage of, oh, you got to let rookies develop, give them time, let them earn their spot on the roster. Listen, Vikings, you are going to be playing from behind the rest of the season. Just start out in both the 2-minute drill, don't even try to run the ball, and have Jordan Addison out there ahead of KJ Osborne. You don't need to be drawing up plays for KJ Osborne. At the end of the game, they had a great dig. Jettas runs a seam route to draw off the coverage. Osborne drops it. It just, Addison is so good. He's so efficient when he does get the ball. He had only 3 receptions, 71 yards and a touchdown, but he only needed 3 receptions. He found the end zone again. So Addison was a star as well, but Hawkinson, he did fine. Is Hawkinson an elite tight end, or is he just like the best of the rest?
No, he's elite. He's elite for
elite?
sure. He should have been considered elite. I think one of the reasons that was held back was because of the contract thing. He got his contract. He's elite. I mean, to me, top 3 for sure in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
7 for 66 and 2.
Yes.
Can we expect that week after week? Is he entered the Mark Andrews?
So that goes back to the point I was making earlier of like, I think it may be this tit for tat kind of with him and Jordan Addison. That's why I'm trying to say who actually is the number 2 option. I mean, tonight you would say Hawkinson, right? But last week, right, Jordan Addison also had a nice game. So I don't know. I think that's where you're going to kind of get frustrated because not every game is going to be a shootout like this one against Minnesota.
Against the Eagles?
Yeah, against Philly.
I actually kind of do think a lot of games are going to be a shootout. I don't think that the Minnesota Vikings defense is very good at all. And I think that the Vikings are going to be playing from behind in a lot of games. I just think if you cut out KJ Osborne, both Addison, obviously Jefferson, and Hawkinson can all be fantasy gold for the rest of the year. Moving to the other side of, well, not the other side of the ball, the other side of the field, the Philadelphia Eagles. We are both diehard Cowboys fans. How frustrating was it to see, there was questions about their offense coming into this week because they struggled against the Patriots, which admittedly is a good defense. But when you lose a coach like Shane Steichen, who's a great offensive mind, is already developing your guy, Anthony Richardson, really well, I was hoping that the run game wouldn't show up and they would look clunky. The run game showed up and DeAndre Swift absolutely balled out. What were your thoughts on his performance tonight?
I mean, the dude balled out. I mean, 28 carries, 170 yards. Like he did his thing. 1 touchdown. He got sniped twice by Jalen Hurts on the goal. Like that's going to be the most frustrating thing about being any Philly running back manager is the fact that Hurts is going to steal those touchdowns. As soon as literally Swift got them all the way there, and then he was the one pushing Hurts into the end zone.
And you see a 1st and goal from the 1, or really any goal to go opportunity from inside 2 yards, you're just like, touchdown, automatic. Jalen Hurts is going to get this tush push.
Yeah,
it's annoying to see.
I think, well, to answer your question, actually going back to the question you asked originally, as a Cowboys fan, at first I was kind of like, oh, this is great. Like their offense looked so out of sync. It did not look like the Shane Steichen ran offense. I don't know what they were trying to do. They kept trying to get Hurts out on the outside. And I'm like, why are you running these quarterback sweeps? That doesn't make any sense. And it wasn't working. Then finally they're like, oh wait, we have this running back, DeAndre Swift, who we traded for. Let's hand him the ball. And I mean, right as soon as they got him the ball, it was boom, 5 yards there, boom, 7 yards there, boom, 13 yards there, another 5. Yeah. It was just consistent. So
he was gashing him for sure.
Yeah, it looked, and I don't know if that's, well, I don't even know if that's the Minnesota defense, because the Minnesota defense didn't give up a whole lot to Rachaad White last week. So I think it was a combination of the defense, but I think DeAndre Swift is just actually good.
I think DeAndre Swift has always been good. It's always been a question of getting the touches, not being used solely as a pass
catcher.
You don't know. Yeah, and you don't know what happened in Detroit, but he never got that type of workload in Detroit. And it seemed at the start of the year, Kenneth Gainwell was the lead back last week. So it took an injury for him to get this opportunity and show up and show out. Now, the Eagles last year, I think.
Let me ask you this real quick. Do you think he earned the starting back or the starting position in that backfield, or do you think when Kenneth Gainwell comes back, he's gone?
I was actually going to ask you the same thing. He's not going to be gone after that performance. The question is, what percentage of the pie did he get? 28 carries. It doesn't matter how much you rush the ball. 28 carries is going to be the lion's share. That's going to be the most amount any running back's going to get. I think Kenny Gainwell is still going to be brought in to spell him. You saw Boston Scott mixed in. Rashad Penny was mixed in very slightly, but he didn't do much. I had traded for Rashad Penny. You want to talk about a back? You should trade off your dynasty roster immediately. No future value. If there's any chance to sell Rashad Penny for any price, just do it right now. I don't see a future for Rashad Penny at all, unless you do.
No, I absolutely don't. And I think at this point, I'll wait and see if I'm a Gainwell or a Swift manager, but I still don't. It was great to have Swift tonight, but when Gainwell gets back, I think it's going to be it's not going to be a fun situation.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Going to the Eagles passing game, Jalen Hurts found his stride. I mean, DeVonta Smith bailed him out on his first deep shot. And then the second deep shot to DeVonta Smith, which went for a touchdown. DeVonta Smith finished with 4 receptions, 131 and a touchdown. But these 2 big deep shots were pretty much his whole production for the evening. He just caught it in stride and smoothly ran to the end zone. You couple that performance with the fact that he was also the most productive wide receiver last week. And then A.J. Brown looking really, really frustrated on the sideline. Al Michaels and Kirk covered it really well. Like, yeah, it seems like A.J. Brown's a little bit upset. Is there a changing of the guard at the Eagles wide receiver room? Is it 1A, 1B at the very least? Or is DeVonta Smith maybe the one?
I think perception will always have A.J. Brown as the one. I say always. Currently, I still think perception is A.J. Brown is the one. However, production says differently. DeVonta Smith is the one. Like, you can... No matter how long the perception of the majority is that A.J. Brown is the one, DeVonta Smith is the one that I want. Like, honestly, if I had to choose between those two right now, like, it looks like that's who's bailing. Like we said, that's who's bailing Jalen Hurts out. A.J. Brown getting frustrated. I mean, I think, to me, DeVonta Smith has earned. Again, we always say this, right? Targets are earned. He's earned the trust of Jalen Hurts.
Well, A.J. Brown had a considerable amount of targets, and if it hadn't been for a holding penalty by Rashad Penny, he'd have a touchdown. And if it hadn't been for I'd say a pass interference, he probably would have had another one. So, I don't think A.J. Brown's going anywhere, but do you think that DeVonta Smith is perhaps just getting the more the higher efficiency targets? I mean, he's being used as more of the deep threat.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think he's also getting the favorable matchups. Like, if any team is playing the Eagles, they're putting their best defender on A.J. Brown. So in that regard, he is the 1A because he's going to draw the top guy for now until they figure out, wait, DeVonta Smith. Like, it's probably a nightmare going into a defensive meeting that the week you play Philly. Like, can you imagine?
Oh, yeah.
You got to stop Dallas Goedert. You got to stop A.J. Brown. You got to stop DeVonta Smith. So I do think as well, he is earning the more efficient targets. Like, he's earning the targets down, DeVonta Smith, that is earning the targets downfield. So right now, the wide receiver 1 in Philly is DeVonta Smith. And that's the wide receiver I want after back-to-back kind of subpar, in A.J. Brown standards, subpar weeks from A.J. Brown.
Do you think, before we just move on, A.J. Brown, is he a trade away candidate right now? And who would you be looking to trade him for? What's a player you could go get to maybe get younger and get the same level of production? Because A.J. Brown's going to have his games. Like, I know it's been a down 2 weeks, but A.J. Brown is still a heck of a receiver. Is there a name that pops into mind, though, that if you are concerned, you should be pursuing?
To be completely honest, no. I mean, there's only 3 wide receivers right now, and we're talking dynasty, right? We're not talking redraft. Right. We're talking, if you're trading away A.J. Brown, it's in a dynasty league. Right now, it's CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase that are really considered over A.J. Brown at this time. Yes, it's only 2 weeks in, and he's had 2 subpar performances, but I'm not really worried about it. We'll see how this it looks like tonight they finally hit a stride. Last week, they did not hit a stride offensively at all either. So we'll see how it goes on. I'm holding on to A.J. Brown. I'm not worried. I'm not going to trade him right now.
Yeah,
are you trading him?
You and me are the type of players that are always open for business if the price is right.
Sure.
And I think that there are managers out there that are constantly looking to deal, certain players every single week. So the type of people I think A.J. Brown, if you could get Chris Olave straight up for A.J. Brown, is that someone you would trade for if you wanted to get younger? Because do you think Olave could match his production this season?
I mean, he could. That's actually
I would say
Chris Olave, A.J. Brown.
Yeah. Olave's on a worse offense, but he doesn't have to worry about a DeVonta Smith on the opposite side of the field. Just whatever's left of Michael Thomas and occasionally Rashid Shaheed. So he's also younger. So I think Chris Olave would be a name I would I would potentially pursue if I have AJ Brown, but I'm not like you. I'm not worried about it. I'm just aware of the fact that DeVonta Smith is also going to get his. So lastly, it was good to see Jalen Hurts. As much, once again, we are Cowboys fans. We hate the Eagles. We hate you. You guys think you invented small town teams. You didn't. I'm sorry you were poorly marketed for 40 something years and all you had was Mark Wahlberg and the Invincible movie. Side note, Nick Foles saved you. You can't get it done with Jalen Hurts. You lost in the Super Bowl. Quit acting like you are the second coming of all great gritty football fans. I don't know where that came from. I just need to get that out.
Did you have a long day, Josh? Is that
I did. I'm a little frustrated. I had an IKEA visit today, and as a married man with a young child, an IKEA visit, you're in a maze looking for an exit, and your child needs a diaper change. It's like watching the Eagles beat the Cowboys. It's rare, and you hate to see it happen. So either way, I digress. Before we move on to the Eagles, I'm a big fan of Jalen Hurts, Texas high school football player. I think he carries himself so well. A lot of fantasy quarterbacks disappointed in week one, and specifically in Dynasty, Jalen Hurts was drafted around Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in startups this last season. How good was it to see him to kind of return to form after a really rough week one?
He's tricky, man. I'm interested to see how the top 5 QBs do this year because so far, we have not gotten what we expect from the top 5 QBs in Dynasty, right? That's the Patrick Mahomes, that's Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. 5 is up there, but let's put Lamar there for now, right?
Let's not put Lamar there, but continue.
No, Lamar. Who are you putting over Lamar?
Justin Herbert, easily Justin Herbert. And then you can make an argument for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields.
We'll say Justin Herbert. He's the only one that actually performed. But of those, going back to Jalen Hurts, like, it was good to see him get back to quote unquote normal. But if you look at his production, it came off of those 2 touchdowns that DeAndre Swift set him up for. Like, take away that 12 points and he has like a pretty average game, right? I'm pretty sure he had 27 points. So he goes down to, what's that? Minus 10. I can do math. I promise. 20 or 15. I can do math. He is like, if he doesn't get those touchdowns, he's 15 points in. Like you're like banking that he gets those carries in. So they didn't do a great job passing them off. I'm being completely honest. He hit DeVonta Smith on those deep balls, but I mean, were you impressed by his passing performance?
No, I really wasn't. And the other thing I'll say is Jalen Hurts has always been an efficient runner. He's not someone who electrifies you with his runs all that often. He runs very smart, very decisively. And then also those goal line plays, like you're talking about, they're really well designed.
I would argue that he didn't even run well tonight. Like, I don't think he ran well. Like, he did not at all. Like, the design runs were garbage. He had a few, like, scramble, but I don't think he ran well for Jalen Hurts standards.
That's my thing, is that he punched the ball in from the 1 on QB sneaks. This wasn't him breaking a tackle, making a guy miss. He's also, listen, he's a $260-something million man now. He's going to protect his body a little bit more. I was about to say 260
pounds. I was like, no. He's not that
Jalen Hurts been really, he's been eating. Him and Eddie Lacy, man, they've been training together in the offseason. So, no, I think it was good to see the offense that they built around Jalen Hurts be efficient again. Did Jalen Hurts dazzle and pass the eyeball test? Maybe not. But when you're on an offense where you have so many weapons that are putting you in a position to score that many times, and when you can score automatically from the 5 in, I'm not worried about it. It was good to see. It was refreshing to see. I'm sure there will be games where he dazzles again. Can I root for Jalen and still hate him as an Eagle? Is that like allowed?
Welcome to fantasy football. You have to do that.
Okay, good. I knew the answer. I wanted you to give our listeners permission as well. That needs to be spoken of.
You guys have permission. If your team, whatever it is, hopefully it's not the Chargers or the Raiders, but if your team has a player that you're rooting for, root for the player. Like, it's okay. Or if they're playing against the player, just root for them. It's fine.
Yeah,
you have permission.
Totally fine. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with All Aboard or Overboard. Obviously, we are a Dynasty-focused show, but something we don't talk enough about in Dynasty is how redraft can massively affect a player's value, specifically perception. This last week, if you're playing in any format, you have heard the name Puka Nakua. He's actually someone we brought up on our off-season sorting through the hype with NFL insider Charles Robinson. Puka is a wide receiver on the Los Angeles Rams, and if you weren't already aware, he absolutely set the Seahawks on fire this last week with 15 targets, 10 receptions, and over 100 yards. Dylan, what did you like from Puka on the field? What showed up on film that you really enjoyed or maybe perhaps didn't enjoy?
well, what I could find of the footage of him actually on the field in college.
Oh my
Is
gosh.
that what you're referring to?
No, I was just the Seahawks game. Just the
Oh,
Seahawks
just the
game.
Seahawks game. Oh, he actually was on the field. That's why you're using that sample size.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, he really is a really, really good wide receiver. He's a polished route runner. He's a contested catch guy. He's got solid size. He does fit that kind of Robert Woods, kind of feel that they had with the Robert
All
Woods Cooper
around
Kupp.
receiver.
Yeah, the all around kind of, he can be your just reception guy if you need just a first down, but he can also be downfield. He can get some yak. All that to say, he's a great receiver. I just do not trust the dude to stay healthy. He missed practice today because of an oblique injury. Like, it just pops up. He missed time in training camp. From what I see on the field, he looks like a great talent. I know you, Josh, have an opinion about him, a very strong opinion. How do you feel about Puka Nakua? What did you see on the field last Sunday that showed you that he is the waiver wire god?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, even in dynasty leagues, he might be on the waiver wire. But I think what's important, well, we'll find out. The line is, are you all aboard or overboard? Puka Nakua finishing as a top 20 fantasy wide receiver this year. Before you react to that, Dylan, I know you're for our audio only. Dylan is scoffing in ways I have literally never seen.
Top 20 wide receiver.
Yeah, it's more than possible. It's more than possible. But I want to just show you how quickly a player's value can change from a dynasty perspective. If you were one of the lucky few that perhaps believed in Puka early, you drafted him with a late rookie pick, or maybe you picked him up off your dynasty waivers just a couple weeks ago, or even as early as last week. Maybe you won the fab war that you had to engage in to get him. 6 months ago, in Keep Trade Cut, the database we use to really track players' public value, he was the wide receiver 191. On Monday, he had moved all the way up to wide receiver 66. Dylan, can you guess, as of today, where Puka Nakua is valued in Keep Trade Cut?
I'm going to assume it's too high. Let's go. I'm going to say 30s. Let's go 38. Wide receiver 38.
He is the wide receiver 33. He is valued above Keenan Allen. He is valued below a Chris Godwin after one NFL game. Now, my question to you, Dylan.
Asinine.
It might be. But the question is this a diamond in the rough, or is this fool's gold? Is this us overreacting to one single game, or is this someone that you absolutely can, just celebrate because it's like you took your mother's old jewelry to the pawn shop and you found out it was like a super rare diamond or, piece of jewelry that's going to be worth millions? Like, that's the question. And more importantly, if you already have him, should you sell him high right now? Because right now, if you can get Keenan Allen straight up for Puka Nakua, even in a dynasty league, should you do it?
I mean, that depends on your build, right? If you're rebuilding, no, just take your shot on Puka Nakua, right? And hope that he plans out. I just don't understand what we're chasing here. Like, it was 1 week. I get it. Cooper Kupp will be back in 3 weeks now. Like, does this production continue with Cooper Kupp? I don't think so. He got all the Cooper Kupp targets, right? Like, who else had? I mean, I guess there was some Tutu Atwell targets there. There were some. I don't think it's sustainable. He can't stay healthy. Like, those are the red flags for me. If I'm going to buy a player, I want to know, is he going to be able to stay on the field? If I'm paying top 35 wide receiver prices for a guy that's had one impressive game in an offense that I'm not convinced is actually good, I'm not buying at that price. Keenan Allen, Treylon Burks. Are you taking Treylon Burks over Puka Nakua?
I'm taking Puka Nakua over Treylon Burks right now. Absolutely. No question. No question.
Let me tell you. Over Treylon Burks.
Absolutely.
Oh my
Treylon Burks has never had a game close to Puka Nakua. And let's keep in mind, this was Puka's debut game. They loved him in training camp. You heard that from Charles directly. The other thing we have to remember is the head coach involved in the offensive scheme involved. We have had years and years of Sean McVay having multiple super productive NFL wide receivers. If Cooper Kupp is Peter Parker, Puka Nakua, which also sounds like a comic book name, is definitely Miles Morales. He is the heir apparent, and he's going to be mentored by one of the greatest route runners in the game. Cooper Kupp is 30 years old, and you talk about health. Cooper Kupp certainly isn't healthy. So let's just take the Cooper Kupp side of the argument away. There's still plenty of targets to go around. Matthew Stafford, I'll come back to Matthew Stafford. But when Matthew Stafford's on the field, he is slinging the rock all over the place. I think Puka Nakua does finish as a top 20 fantasy wide receiver this year. Not only is it in his range of outcomes, but I'm going to assume he can stay healthy so he can, I think he's going to push his body to the limit so he can stay on this roster long-term and get a long-term deal.
I didn't say this, but I'm obviously overboard. And like we alluded to last week, I'm way out, probably about 200 yards out on a raft with a margarita in my hand. And I'm looking at the yacht going up in flames with Puka Nakua, like truthers on the yacht. I just don't understand. There's
Jokes
no draft
on you.
capital behind him. They're like, I just don't. Where is this coming from? Like, what is the precedent other than one football game? No, none of these people that are actually Puka Nakua truthers watched him at the Senior Bowl, or else they would have been higher on him before.
Yeah, we didn't know to pay attention to him.
Understand.
Listen, when a player shows up like that on the field, you can't ignore it. Number one, Antonio Brown was a 6th round pick. Amon-Ra was a 4th round pick. These receivers come out in every draft class. We just don't know about them because we didn't think they were worth paying attention to until they show up on an NFL field.
You know who else showed out last year? You know who else showed out last year as a 2nd round pick? Wan'Dale Robinson. Where is he now?
That's fair. It might. Okay.
Listen,
I'm on the yacht. That's a good point.
I got a raft for you. I've got a margarita for you.
I hear you. But Wan'Dale Robinson didn't show out to the way Puka did on the offense Puka is on. I trust Sean McVay immensely. The only thing I don't trust,
Giants
and if I'm worried about,
the Giants' offense was bad with him.
With Wan'Dale
for Wan'Dale, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, I agree. Puka's on a great offense with a great offensive mind who knows how to utilize his talents, and they already showcased that. I'm going to trust it.
Offensive mind, but yeah, okay.
I'm going to trust it.
I'll let you get your point off.
All I was going to say was that if there is a concern to be had, in my opinion, it is Matthew Stafford. This is an older quarterback toward the end of his career. I think he could fall over anytime. But I'm buying Puka Nakua. I think if you have a chance to go purchase him in a dynasty league, I think you should, because this might be the last time you can get him at a reasonable price before he is considered a top 24 dynasty wide receiver.
I really wish Mike was here because Mike is the Puka Nakua owner in the yacht club. And I want to know what it would take for him to part with Puka Nakua.
Oh, no, I tried to trade for Puka before that game for a 2nd and a 3rd, not straight up, but other things. But I didn't want to buy him with just a 2nd because I had the same reservations you did. And he's like a 5th round pick. And there's all these things. I'm like, no, I'm just not going to take that risk. And I feel like a fool right now because he absolutely just, as I continue to say, he showed up and he showed out. The most important thing you can do on an NFL field is dominate. And that's what he did. Now he's got a tough matchup coming up this week against San Fran. Let's see how he does there. And as you mentioned, he does have some injuries. So if you did sell high, I don't think it's completely the wrong decision. You can make a profit from what you got him on or what you drafted him from, certainly. But if you really want to build a team that's going to make a championship run, you have to plant your flag on guys like Puka when they do show up. So I think it's worth the risk because the cost was probably low for you as an owner. Dylan, speaking of costs being low, you bought Darren Waller for your yacht club team in the offseason at a very reasonable price. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys looked like a defense we haven't seen in 20, 30 years, maybe since the 2000s Ravens, but that was only one game. Darren Waller didn't show up much in that game, but no Giant did. Are you concerned, however, for the Giants as a whole and specifically Darren Waller? Because this was one of those key pieces. You put together a team that is supposed to challenge for a championship, but you almost did it a little bit like Moneyball, a little bit on a budget. Darren Waller, I would say, is a little bit of a key piece there. I'm not trying to diss you. I'm trying to compliment you, balling on a budget.
You're right. I was balling on a budget. I'll start with Darren Waller. I'm a little worried about Darren Waller. I had some claims out there that he would finish as tight end 1 overall. I'm not going to back out of those just yet. Check in with me week 5. I'm not backing out just yet. The Cowboys defense looked phenomenal. Like you said, they looked absolutely incredible. It didn't even look like the Giants offense got off the bus. Like they would have been better off just not showing up, right? It was just terrible. But I trust Brian Daboll. I also have planted my flag on Daniel Jones this year, which he also looked awful. I'm going to write off this game. I'm going to write off this game. I'm not even.
You should.
I'm going to not even worry about it going into this week. It's a new week. I'm looking forward to seeing Darren Waller on the field, healthy, hamstring intact, and Daniel Jones getting out there, Daboll firing up his team like he's good at doing, getting an offensive game plan together that works. And I think we'll see a bounce back from the Giants offense. I think last week was embarrassing. embarrassing. And I have
It
a
was
lot of
also
confidence in Brandon
raining.
Dayball. It
Yeah.
was raining. Yeah, it was raining. So, yeah.
The weather wasn't cohesive to a good passing game. So I think you can write last week off. They're playing Arizona this week. Arizona had 6 sacks. They held Washington to, I believe, only 20 points. They look like a little bit of a good defense. So I do think it will actually be a good litmus test for Darren Waller. So maybe there's a comeback story here, perhaps.
Plug. Nice. What I will say, the last thing on the Giants offense, because we're Cowboys fans, we don't want to talk anymore about the NFC East, but Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than Sam Howell. I don't know how else to say it. He's a better
Well,
quarterback than Sam Howell. And I think
another,
their offense
yeah.
is going to look better against the Cardinals defense, hopefully. And they also have Saquon Barkley, who is better than Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. So I think it'll be a different matchup there.
If you're a Saquon Barkley owner, no doubt you were disappointed last week. But we, as you said, we're disappointed with all Giants last week. And as Cowboys fans, we're thankful. Saquon, in his contract this year, if he rushes for 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, and I believe it's over 55 receptions, 56 receptions, something like that, he earns an additional, I believe, $2 million. I think the Giants are going to try to get it to him. And I think he's going to get a huge chunk of all of that production against Arizona, bottom-dwelling teams like that. Saquon is key to their offense. In fact, something I noticed in that Cowboys game, they pulled Saquon from the game before they pulled their franchise QB. Did you notice that? They let Daniel Jones continue to be sacrificed. They're like, no, Saquon. Like, it was terrible.
Guy.
No, it was awful. Speaking of quarterbacks, we've already reacted to it. It is confirmed. Last Monday night, or this past Monday night, I should say, Aaron Rodgers did tear his Achilles. He is done for the season. In Yacht Club, you, as I've said, are pushing for a playoff spot. He was your quarterback too. You and I got a trade done surrounding Aaron Rodgers, which may surprise people. Do you want to talk about why because you approached me for that trade. What was the thought process dealing someone like Aaron Rodgers other than get him the heck off my team?
Yeah, a lot of it was just, it was roster construction. And we have a taxi squad with 4 people on our taxi squad, and we have 2 IR spots. All of that is filled for me before the Aaron Rodgers injury. So he was just taking up space on my team. And being a contender, I needed to make a move for a third quarterback. My quarterbacks right now are Prescott, Carr, and then Garoppolo, like you said, I just traded for. And with not having any picks, I'm really all in this year, and I'm going for it this year. And the last thing I want is another quarterback injury to be the reason why I'm not able to compete. So the reason why I approached you was, let me get someone. I have Jacoby Myers on that team as well. Let me get someone who actually looked pretty decent last week. I trust that he knows the McDaniel offense. And so I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of learning that he needs to do. It's just going to be more so getting in there. He's got DeVonta Adams. He's got Jacoby Myers, some weapons there. And I knew that you could take the chance on, maybe just because you're tanking for 25, like we talked about multiple times, maybe you can use an Aaron Rodgers of just, you're not competing this year, you're not even competing next year, but maybe you can flip him. So that's why I did it more so strategically for my roster, and because I like to have a third quarterback on my teams. Why did you accept the trade for Aaron Rodgers?
No, totally. Just so listeners know, it was not Aaron Rodgers for Jimmy G straight up. I wasn't like, here, Dylan, here's a free starting healthy quarterback. I don't love you. I don't love you that much. Certainly not. We've lived a lot of life together, but no. Aaron Rodgers is interesting because when you are rebuilding, you can take up a roster spot with someone who you just need to wait a year on. And Rodgers, I believe, is going to come back and play for the Jets. I believe he completely has unfinished business. He's someone who cares about legacy. He cares about the game. I don't think that's how he wants to be remembered ending his career by any stretch. So Aaron Rodgers, I think next year, be very interesting to see how he comes back and in what fashion. So I'll take him for next year, number one. Number two, after week one, not that I was thinking I could make a player a splash, but I was still telling myself I'm going to compete for games. So I had 2 starting quarterbacks, one of them being Jordan Love, who I'm developing. You offered me 2 seconds for Jimmy G and Aiden O'Connell, and there were some other pieces in there as well. And so for me, it's just hey, this is an opportunity to grab additional capital. I don't think I'm ever going to get a first for Jimmy G, just with where the economy of our league is at. So I made a move that sacrificed my pride and my ability to compete in some matchups to do what was best for my roster long term. If Aaron Rodgers comes back healthy, maybe that's someone I can flip for a better player next year if someone needs a healthy QB. And number two, maybe I can use him for myself to compete a little bit more. We'll just have to wait and see. before we leave on Rodgers, we talked a little bit about it. What do you do with Garrett Wilson right now in Dynasty? Does his value completely tank, or is it kind of just plateauing because you're waiting for Rodgers to get back? I mean, the catch he had with Zach Wilson, I think only solidified it in my mind that, talking about once again the touchdown catch, how talented he is and how quarterback proof he potentially could be.
Oh, Garrett Wilson. If I'm a Garrett Wilson owner right now, I'm nervous. I really am. I'm nervous. He's proven that he can produce with quarterbacks like Zach Wilson. And the biggest argument I've heard is he did it with Zach Wilson. He did it with Mike White. He did it with Joe Flacco. But there's a significant difference in their whole philosophy as a team right now. They just beat the Buffalo Bills, a divisional opponent, one of the top 3, let's say top 5 teams in the NFL, right? They beat
certainly
them,
in everyone's perception, yeah.
In everyone's perception, yeah. They beat them without Aaron Rodgers, with Zach Wilson. And how did they do it? They played great defense and they ran the ball. I don't think they're going to get away from that. And so It's going to have to be uber efficiency from Garrett Wilson, which I'm not writing him off. I'm not saying he can't do. And currently I think he's still I want to say he's top 8 wide receivers on KTC still. And I think he's warranted. I wouldn't be freaking out right now. I'd be interested to see what it looks like because there's no one else to fight for targets for. So I'm not panicking right now, but I'm nervous because they're going to run the ball and they're going to play defense, and they're not going to put the ball in Zach Wilson's hand and say, go win us the game.
Last question before we take a quick break. With Garrett Wilson, I've already traded for Aaron Rodgers, right? In this rebuilding fashion that I'm going for. Be good later. What's the maximum price? You know how many firsts I have. I have like 10 of them. What's the maximum amount of firsts I should go trade for a Garrett Wilson right now? Should I maybe go try to acquire him and store him for the future?
So we're talking yacht club and the stigma around 25 picks. Like you just said, I traded you 25 seconds in that trade for Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy G. Yeah.
I tried so hard to try and trade those 25 seconds for a wide receiver upgrade. No one's taking them. Just to kind of lay out the kind of back story behind how our league values 25 picks. I would say for Garrett Wilson, 3.
It would take 3. Is it worth? I don't think it's worth it to pay 3 first.
No, I'm not saying it's worth it, but that's what it would. I think that's what it would take. Even because Davis he's the one that has Garrett Wilson in the club. And
Davis will charge me.
You're not even. He's not even. He's gonna decline 3 so quickly.
Yeah, no, he absolutely would. Just for listeners out there, though, for Garrett, is Garrett Wilson a buy now candidate because he's vulnerable and there's a dip, or is he still just going to be priced too high?
I think if the manager who has him probably is pricing him too high. If you can get a deal on him, meaning, so take it outside of the context of the yacht club, right? I use that for our league specifically. If you can go and get Garrett Wilson for a first and a second, maybe someone's willing to part with him for that. I wouldn't do.
It's so subjective.
First. I wouldn't do 224 first. Like a 24 first and a second. I would do a 24 first and a 25 first. I would do that for Garrett Wilson, but not 224 first.
Yeah, and every league is so different. The scoring format, whether you're 10, 12, 14, we play in a deep league, so we always try to give you prices based on extremists and guys who are super, super dialed in. And after we take this quick break, we will be going below deck to talk more about that super, super competitive league. The attraction of Dynasty football, at least for almost all of our members in the Yacht Club, is this idea that you get to have a franchise that over time is going to take on your personality. Dylan, you've known me for a long time. We've referenced it a couple times on the show, but just to show the amount of mileage we've had together, you've met not just my wife, but you knew my wife before she was my fiance, when she was my girlfriend, and when we first started dating, right?
Correct.
And you were a witness to our entire kind of love story right up to the time we got married and even through our marriage.
Yeah. I was there.
Do you remember, all right, first and foremost, so people know, I definitely married above my pay grade. I mean, she's very lucky. Like, she's incredibly lucky. That being said, it's one of those things where people meet us as a couple and they go, oh, you're with him. Oh, he must have a great personality. And I'm a confident, very handsome, very beautiful man. I'm very self-affirming in that way. My wife is a smoke show. So one of my favorite things I get to say with people is that for a season, I actually broke up with her. You remember this, Dylan. For 6 months, we were broken up. And do you remember how I was like in that?
You were a mess. You were sleeping on friends' couches. You were You were a mess, bro. We couldn't barely get a hold of you. You were working some you were working in the kitchen at some
I,
restaurant. Like, you were a mess,
I was
bro.
I was doing a lot of things. Okay, I was trying to find myself. The truth is, we didn't really break up in our heart of hearts. We took a break because she didn't know what her college future held, and I didn't know career wise if we were going to get together and get married. All that to say, if I have someone in my heart, I don't leave them. I've really only ever loved Larissa, and I made it my point to marry her. Even in the 6 months we weren't together, I knew that she was the woman for me. I share that story because I know I'm going to have to defend the fact to the listeners
You better have
that
a ring
after
ready for this man. You better have a ring. You better get down on one knee right now, and there better
George
be some vows
Pickens,
exchanged.
will you
Oh
please
my
stay on
gosh.
my dynasty roster for the rest of your career? Would you make me the happiest owner ever? And please, for the love of all that is good and holy, work your way into the top 10 dynasty wide receivers. I went and got George Pickens. There isn't another player in dynasty or really in fantasy football in general that I have been more obsessed with. And I let him go to Mike for the right price. I reacquired him for a steep price, but I think I made a little bit of profit in the margins. Would you say that I won the trade long term, Dylan?
No, no, no. I would not say you won the trade. You know how I feel about. I wish you would have consulted me about this. Your wife, I was totally cool with. George Pickens, no. Like you, what do you have the trade in front of you? Do you have exactly what it
Oh,
was?
I know it off the top of my head. Yeah, I
Like you
traded a
remembered it like
first.
vows.
Absolutely. No, I traded a first and two thirds to reacquire George Pickens. Keep
A
in mind,
25 first.
yeah, Mike's 25 first. He
Okay.
wanted his first back. He was
Hmm.
obsessed with that. That was the apple of his eye. I couldn't let George go. And the reason I did the trade to trade George Pickens away in the first place, if you remember, I got a first, a second, and also Jake Ferguson. And having Ferguson as well as Pickens, I still have 10 firsts. I'm going to still try to accrue more firsts. But my team just isn't my team without George on it. And I just had to go get him. I believe in this guy. And now with Deontay Johnson out, at least for a couple weeks, is what the report said, with a hamstring injury, I think George is going to have a chance to really shine. Do you disagree with that?
I do. I do disagree. Okay, I disagree to an extent. First of all, you and Mike basically just dated each other's girlfriends and then just went back to your exes. That's exactly what you guys did. Because Mike is
Stop
just
it.
as married to his first as you are to George Pickens. That's exactly what you guys just did.
Fair
Um,
enough.
no, so I think that yes, I think George Pickens can have some upside while Deontay Johnson's out. He could have a game or two where he booms. I
Right.
just don't think it's sustainable. That's been my biggest argument with George Pickens as a whole is his separation is not great. He cannot separate, and he doesn't have yak. He goes up, he comes down with the ball, and he does that whenever he gets the
That's what
ball
you
thrown his way.
saw in his rookie season because he was still recovering
Saw
from
it
an
in
ACL
college
tear.
too. No, you
In
saw
the
it in college too.
preseason, I don't know. I don't watch enough college film to disagree with you, but I'm sure I'm right because my heart tells me I'm right.
Okay, okay.
Um, at least admit this. He's going to have the opportunity these next couple weeks, right? Like,
Yes, he will have the opportunity.
right. I don't want to miss that opportunity. Seeing him go off, if he did develop into who I believe he is on Mike's team, would kill me. It would absolutely kill me. So I had to go get him. And you know who actually was a massive fan of the trade was our, first of all, I don't think we've mentioned enough. Davis is not with us tonight because he had a work event come up. We miss the Value King immensely. He is a huge part of this show, and he will be back
We love
very
you,
shortly.
VK. We love you,
Yeah.
VK.
Well, we love you as the show, like as an owner in the league. What?
Yeah, that's true.
But Davis did what we actually have two names for Davis, and it's not the Value King. Davis is known, especially when he's being a bit of the D word in Yacht Club, as David. Everyone just refers to him as David. Mike got a full dose of David in the chat after he traded me back Pickens. And Mike and David were going at it. I was worried the show was going to get canceled.
Mike blew up. I was playing pickleball at the time, so I didn't see it all go down live. I was reading through the messages, and literally my wife is like, "What are you reading?" Because I was scrolling through, and I was just my eyes kept getting wider and wider and wider, and there was no resolve. I legitimately thought they weren't friends anymore. Like they tore their bracelets off, and they weren't friends anymore.
It's fantastic. And first and foremost, part of what makes the Yacht Club great is everyone is dialed in. There's lots of inside jokes, but people roast each other. Like if you make a horrible move, we don't let you forget it ever. We bring it up at weddings, funerals. Like, we are the league. Like, that's what we do. And I think what was really happening is Mike had really never let himself be himself in the league because he was still kind of the new guy and he was being polite to everyone. Mike had just had it with all the smack talk Davis was talking, and he laid down the law. He was like, I came in as an expansion team and you can't stop chirping at me. Why are you obsessed with me? Don't you have other time to spend? Don't you got other things you can be doing? And Davis was like, I'm not. Why are you getting emotional, man? Why are you getting emotional? It was fantastic. Before we, part of why we share that, fantasy, obviously you want to win a championship. And this is not to say like it's the friends you make along the way. It's not. It's about the championship. But I would be lying to say, if I didn't say it, that is, that one of my favorite parts of fantasy is a good group chat. So Dylan, I would ask you, what has been do you have a favorite moment from even a yacht club group chat over the last couple of years that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean,
that you can share on air.
Yeah, no, I've had my fair share of David moments, and I think there was one where, again, Davis. I'm David. Remember when I say David, I'm saying Davis.
Right.
Davis just knows how to he just keeps going. There is no limit to. He knows you're pissed off, and he's just going to keep poking and poking and poking. And so we had this complete falling out over a trade that I don't even remember the trade now, but he of course had his opinion on the trade. And I was Mike. I had it. I was like, bro, you're so childish. You're so selfish. What are you talking? Like literally I started to tag. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't even know do you even have a life? Why are you on this app all the time? I literally was just going for it so hard. And then literally Davis just goes, yeah, well, your team sucks. And that literally set me, that little remark just set me over. So I've had, and everyone has, so many people have had their moments with Davis. You've had your moments with Davis, I'm sure, your fair share. But do you have a specific moment that you're thinking of? Because I can see the grin on your face. I
mean, last night was really, really funny because all of us were kind of chirping in to support Mike, because this was the first time Mike had kind of let the full out competitor out and be like, no, I'm going to beat you. I came in with way less than the rest of you as an expansion team. That was really entertaining. I think one of my favorites was when one of our owners, who is not very active in the chat, there's really a couple of us that are always going to be posting, that was frustrated about an argument, and he just posted, "Good night, ladies." And everyone just lost their stuff because it was just so well timed. But that's why you do it. You have long lasting trade relationships. You have people that you're going to get deals done with easily. You have people that you're in contact with all the time. You have lifelong friends like you and I, and then you have people you meet only through fantasy, and that's the only way you know them. And that's part of what makes the Yacht Club great. As an announcement, part of what we want to do for the listeners, we talk a lot about our own rosters. If you want to dive deeper into the Yacht Club, we do have a website that we are going to be launching within the next month, where you can go and view every single member of the Yacht Club. If you think that we're entertaining and that we're stars, just wait till you meet the rest of the gang. So that's something we're excited to both announce and tease. Before we jump off, Dylan, any final thoughts as we get ready for Sunday and another weekend of fantasy goodness?
Buckle up, be patient. We're only in week 2. And remember, those rookies, be patient. JSN, be patient. Not everyone can be Jordan Addison. It's a simple reminder.
Like QJ, should I still be patient with QJ?
Do not be patient with QJ. or QJ's ship has sailed, unfortunately.
You're wrong about that. QJ's fine. You guys should hang on to him. Until next time, guys, I'm always going to be tanking for 25. Dylan is still chasing the playoffs, and hopefully you are listening in and making your roster better at least 1% with every show you listen to. Thanks again for listening in.